All right, guys. Sorry about that. In testing earlier this week, it sounded good, but right now, I don't know. Sorry. So, we got Adam, TNA Tackle. Again, welcome. Round 2 to Musky Talk Mondays. So, biggest question for me to you, Adam, is how the hell do you pronounce your last name?
It's pronounced Cwiklinski.
Cwiklinski. Okay.
Yep, you got it right on the first try, too. Nice job.
I'm Polish, so I can do that. I forgot what I was calling you guys early, before I could even think of your name. I just went Cwiklinski, but that was totally off. But everyone knew who I was talking about. All right, so first and foremost, congratulations on your guys' success over at TNA. I mean, really, it's pretty damn cool. Pretty cool.
Well, we appreciate that, bud. I mean, it's been a lot of work that we've done, and it's only been a few years, but we're just trying to do our best to get a quality bait out to the people.
Well, that's the most important thing. I mean, we got stiff competition out there. I mean, a lot of great bait makers coming out of the woodworks, and just dipping their feet, and kind of others are just plunging right in. You guys definitely made a name for yourself. And first, let's just start off with the new head design. Take it away with that. I know that we talked about this a little bit earlier. It actually has multiple purposes. If you want to explain to some of the people who maybe haven't had a chance to see them at the expos, or like Ross's or any of the other shops that they're at.
Well, absolutely. It was kind of a stroke of luck when my brother went down to Illinois to check some stuff out, and they came out with this box of just elaborate different jig heads, and he looked at them and said, "That's the one right there. That's the one I want." And they were able to make that for us in a different size, and that summer we pretty much we designed a blade that would actually clack off the head as well. Instead of just creating a vibration, it also created noise. There's 2 points on the blade that actually hit the dragon head as it's going through the water, no matter what you're doing, if you're ripping it or if you're burning it like a bucktail. I mean, it's something very different that the muskies haven't seen in a long time.
It is. I know that, well, I fish Pewaukee a lot. Chatterbaits are pretty much, whatchamacallit. I wouldn't say a staple, but, in people's regular arsenal for bass fishing. And I know that people caught them at Pewaukee. I know our buddy Mike, he had some chatterbaits that I can't even think of the name of them. They stopped making them. And then here you guys are. You got an official muskie chatterbait. Like I said, I fish Pewaukee a lot, and more bass fishermen catch muskies than muskie fishermen do sometimes. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing with the chatterbaits for the bass fishermen is they're really not heavy duty enough for the muskie world. This blade that we designed is actually a lot more heavy duty. I mean, it's made out of a very strong stainless steel. And like I said, it was designed by us. I mean, it took us an entire summer to figure out exactly what we needed to do, testing throughout the fall just to make sure everything was right. So, I mean, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears was put into making this bait. I mean, it's, like I said, it's not like a bucktail. I mean, you're going to get a different vibration off it, but you're still going to get the silhouette of a double 10 going through the water pretty much, because it's a big enough bait.
Now, what I would like to do is get an underwater microphone, and it's something that I've been thinking about for a little bit, and just hear differences. I mean, there's the big controversy in the bucktail world of .051 wire compared to .062 wire, and .051 wire supposedly rattles more or whatever. I'd like that's something that you might be able to help me out with a little bit later on, but that's for another show. Let's talk about more TNA.
Yeah, I've also heard that a single blade clacks more than a double blade too, but like you said, that's a topic for another show at this point.
Yeah. So, like, I just want a brief explanation of how'd you get into the musky world, and then how did you guys get into the bait making world?
Well, it kind of started about probably 4 years ago when I believe it was my brother. He just decided he was done paying so much money for bucktails, and he told me one day, he said, I think I can make these on my own. I'd like to start a company. Would you like in on it? Like, yeah, we can. He's like, well, I want to make a jointed bucktail too. I'm like, well, you have my full attention, He's like, well, I want to connect it with a split ring. That way you can interchange things, and you've got more baits at your handle there. You don't have to fill up your entire tackle box with everything.
Yep.
Well, that's a good idea. He said, I'm going to call it Todd's Toothy Critters. I said, no, I think we'll call it TNA Tackle then.
So that's how the name was.
And yeah, that's Todd and Adam. I mean, it's that easy. And he called me the one day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I never knew he stood for Todd and Adam.
Yeah.
I wanted to think tits and ass.
Well, a lot of people have their head in the gutter. So.
All right, you got me.
I can't fault you for that. I mean,
me.
A lot of people think that way.
All right, so we're learning stuff here, guys. It's for Todd and Adam, and it's Cwiklinski. And there you go.
Correct.
There we go.
And he called me up there one day and said, I got this crazy idea for a bait. He's like, stop over at the house. You got to check this out. So I stopped over, and I saw the beginnings of the Angry Dragon, and it looks absolutely nothing like what everybody sees on the market now. I mean, it was an absolute monstrosity of a bait.
How long?
We actually bring it to the show. We bring it to the shows now and show people just so they can see like where we've come from, what we started at, because it's pretty funny to look at.
I still. Your brother said look up Angry Dragon on Urban Dictionary. I'd like to see that original one. I know I got an older model. It doesn't have the cool dragon head, but that'll change shortly. Hopefully at Mistake on the Lake.
Yeah.
There's a plug for Smokies, you guys, next weekend. What is it, Saturday? It's Mistake on the Lake. 10% off.
Yeah, this Saturday, Mistake on the Lake. It starts at 9 o'clock. From what I heard, feel free to get there earlier and bring some baits out and sell what you don't need in your tackle box, pretty much. I'll be doing some of that, so.
Yeah, I'll be there. Shooting.
I had to free up some room, so.
Well, that's all right. So, first muskie. How'd you catch it? Where was it? What happened?
I believe Todd and I were fishing together with our friends Danny and Tony out on Cranberry Lake up in Vilas County, and we were just chucking random baits that day, and Todd got his first one, and I got my first one that day. I mean, nothing huge to speak about, but it just creates the itch to get out there and do it again. I mean, you see that fish next to the boat, and you want it to happen again every time.
Every time, and here we are, multiple years later.
Yeah. It doesn't stop. I mean, that adrenaline rush does not stop.
So, the posted a status a little while ago, and people wanted to hear some bad jokes on the show. So I heard
bad joke.
Well, either I think corny, but I don't want to go that way. I heard a funny story about you guys and maybe a little bit of a mishap with a muskie.
Yeah, it definitely was a mishap. It involved myself, my brother, and our buddy Mark Denglinger, and it was up on the crab chain right at the launch. We were looking for a place to put Todd's truck and trailer due to the fact that the launch was full. And by the time we had the boat in the water, Todd and I were talking, and we looked down, and Mark had a muskie on, standing in the boat at the launch. So we ran down there, and we said, we looked at each other and said, oh, man, the net's in the back of the truck. And Mark's like, oh, don't worry, he got off. He broke the line. We're like, what are you talking about, Mark? You got strong enough line on there. He's like, oh, I had a bird's nest in it yesterday. I cut it out with my fillet knife.
Oh, my God.
Well, well, that's fantastic, Mark. Good work. Good work on your part.
Oh, shit.
Well, we're going to park the trailer, and we'll get back to you. You tie up, and then we're going to head out on the lake here after we get out of the bay. And when we pushed off, we saw Mark's line floating there, and we looked down, and there was a muskie with a swim bait in its mouth. And the old Polish fire drill ensued when Todd grabbed his fish handling glove and decided to hand line the muskie up into the net that I was holding.
Oh man, I could only imagine the chaos in that, in that split second of when you guys realize, oh my god, that muskie's still on the line. It's still on that swim bait, and there's the line.
It's pretty much burned into my retinas at this point. I mean, it was pretty spectacular. And it ended up turning out to be a 3 muskie day too. I actually stole a fish from Mark on a figure 8.
Oh, that's always good. That's always good, Dave. So I know you guys fish a lot, like you said, the Crabtree up north. I just wanted a little bit more knowledge. 1 for myself, 2 for other people in this area. This is based out of Oak Creek, so Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I fish a lot of the Waukesha area, Pewaukee, Okauchee, Oconomowoc. And I know you guys like to fish Oconomowoc a lot. Now, have you ever hit that during the springtime? Or any of the other, Okauchee or Fowler, LaBelle, or Pewaukee, any of those lakes during the springtime?
Fowler's good until the weeds start growing up.
Okay.
It gets to be a very weedy lake. Oconomowoc, Todd and I have talked about it before. It's better to let that lake warm up a little bit.
Now, how much longer?
Because a lot of...
you know what I'm saying? How much longer do you think that's going to take compared to Pewaukee or even Okauchee, which is a big, deep lake? And I was just out there on Saturday, and main water temps were 52.
Yeah, that's not too bad. Oconomowoc, I'd almost let that sit till the 2nd or 3rd week of June almost. I mean,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, even maybe the last weekend in May.
Okay.
But that's the northern opener, too, so that's usually when I head up north and head up by my buddy's place up in Presque Isle.
Okay.
Up on Area Lake, if you will.
So not too much fishing around here for that, then? For these.
Oconomowoc is a real tricky lake. It's got a lot to do with the water temp and whether those muskies are moving up. And from what I heard last week, they're moving up by the dam already, but a lot of those fish will stay in the river channel coming to the lake until the water warms up enough for them, and they can start hitting the deeper drop-offs where they can find their forage and everything. It kind of depends on when those, not the bait fish, but the panfish will start moving up into the shallows to spawn, and they'll start chasing those as well.
Okay, so you kind of want to, as usual, follow the bait, but primarily the panfish on that lake.
Yeah. I mean, if you find the fridge, you're going to find the fish.
Yeah. With everything, with every type of fishing.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being the case, do you go for? We got clear lakes. Okauchee's pretty clear. Oconomowoc's incredibly clear.
Yes.
With these more clear lakes, especially in the Waukesha area and heavily pressured lakes, do you go more natural? Do you go more vibrant? And this is springtime related. Do you obviously go? Do you go smaller, or do you actually go against the grain and go bigger?
In the springtime, I really like to focus on a glide bait, actually.
Okay, so little phantoms.
I'll run I'll run a 4 to 6 inch phantom, black with an orange tail.
Okay,
that's one of my favorites.
Okay, well, good thing I got one of those.
And if you're not running that, I mean, even a single 8 or a single 9, either flash or marabou is a really good combination for you at that point too.
Okay. Now you guys haven't really. We got a question. So Smokies is going to be carrying the Dragon, correct?
Yes, they have them in stock right now.
All right. So Paul, before your tournament this weekend down in Illinois, go over there, stop, pick one up. I'm not sure exactly on the variety they have. Adam, do they have a pretty good variety over there?
I believe they have 5 or 6 colors.
Okay. And then if people are looking for a little bit different colors, just reach out to TNA and I don't know. They'll play.
Well, you can reach out to TNA or Ross's Sport Shop in Phillips has a couple of their own custom colors, and Team Rhino Outdoors has their own custom colors. They're going to be actually getting a shipment soon of even newer custom colors.
Okay. So be on the lookout for Tro, you guys. Tro course. Best colors in the world.
Yeah, they've got some dynamite stuff there.
Paul, I think Smokies is open during the week. I think maybe only till like 4 p.m. Not 100%
I don't
sure.
think they're going to be open this week, though, Colin.
No?
I think after Saturday at Mistake on the Lake, they might be open during the week. During the week, the opener.
Okay. I'll do some...
So,
Paul, I'll get back to you. I'll find out for you. Talked a little about Muskies, TNA, how it started and everything. Like I said earlier, this is not just going to be a bait makers show. I'm going to have other people. I mean, for example, you got Jeff and Remortel later on. But you got anything in the works? You guys got any secret Black Ops baits coming up?
we do have some stuff we're going to be working on this summer and making sure to perfect before the show season comes up next year.
Okay, so you guys got a bait and expect brain fart. Expect the release showtime, so January-ish, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, and there's two things we're working on, for sure. So
we got 2 Black Ops baits. I like that.
absolutely. Yep.
All right. So any...
Got to have options, Colin.
I do like my options, but I'm bad with that. Like when I go walleye fishing, I pick lead head jigs, lead color, because I can't pick frickin' colors. So I'm just like, fuck it, let's go to lead. Any detail you can give out about those? Or do we have...
I'd rather not go into a great amount of detail on that. A couple people in the inner circle know who might be watching, so hopefully they don't spew anything out in the comments right now.
All right. We'll wait and see. We can be patient. We got plenty of baits coming up from... I mean, this is my second show, and every bait maker I've asked, they got at least one little secret bait coming out. So I'm looking forward to show season next year.
We just want to make sure it works perfectly and get a quality bait out again. I mean, catch plenty of fish on it so people know that it'll actually catch fish.
No, and that's big. I mean, you're already an established brand. You don't want to put out, something that's not going to work.
Absolutely.
So when you guys go up north, and I know Jeff probably be, going a little bit more detail and whatnot. What kind of lakes are you fishing? Clear, deep, shallow?
Well, one of the primary lakes I fish on is relatively clear, and a lot of the water that we fish out there is going to be shallow timber, cabbage weeds, and the occasional rock point mixed with cabbage weeds as well.
Okay, so a little bit clearer. Same tactic? Are you going with those, small glide baits, a little bit natural-ish colors, or what are you checking up there?
Well, in the early season, I will throw Phantom, and if that's not going to start moving fish, I'm gonna switch to a bucktail right away.
Go to bucktail. What's the color? What's the size?
Well, black's always good, buddy. Black and orange, black and red. You can never go wrong with black color.
No, you can't. Now, does the black fall into natural? Like with the orange tail? What's your view on that? What's your opinion on that one?
I'm really not sure if it would go into the natural category as much as it would being creating a bigger silhouette.
Okay. I didn't think about it that way. Yeah, that makes sense, though.
Yeah. Because a lot of the time when you're fishing, late in the day, when the sun's going down and everything, I will definitely switch to a black topwater because it's just going to create that much bigger of a silhouette for that muskie to see as it's going across the top.
Do you guys actually produce pretty good or, see some going after topwater on such an early timing for the year?
Yeah, you're going to want to downsize your topwater at that time of year. Like a lot of the times we'll throw a Night Stalker from Cwik, black and orange Night Stalker, or even Dr. Evil.
Okay, so
for Lake X.
The smallest.
You get a thinner profile out of that than you do a Fat Bastard.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So with, I forgot where I heard it, but so for your, whatchamacallit, your strategy to go into, all right, it's opener or whatever, it's still early in the year. Are you going for that slow, steady, nothing too erratic presentation?
I would say that would depend on the water temperature at that point. If those fish are going to be post-spawn by 2 weeks or something, I'm going to want to try to find like the first break off their spawning areas.
Okay.
And probably run something over the top of their head, like I said, a small bucktail. And you don't want to run it too fast like you would in the summertime when the water temp's like 72 degrees.
Yeah.
You're going to want to run it a little slower. That's why I said the smaller phantoms that time of year are very good, actually. You're going to want to run a straight wire leader on those too. You don't want a fluorocarbon that's going to drag that thing down into the weeds or anything.
That's something I gotta personally invest in this year. Heard a lot of good things about the straight wire leaders, and you do actually notice a difference with them, correct?
Absolutely, that fluorocarbon definitely weighs down the lure at that point. Z leaders actually out of our area in southern Wisconsin, they make some dynamite leaders that a lot of people should check out for sure.
Okay, specific lengths for a smaller phantom. Does he have? What are you going to? With a
you can go with a 12-inch straight wire.
Okay.
That's more than enough at that point. I mean, it's really not that big of an issue. With some of the lakes we fish up there in Vilas County with the clearer water, I'll go with, during the summertime, if I'm burning bucktails, I'm going to go with a 12 to 16-inch fluorocarbon leader, 80 pound.
80 pound. So a little bit thinner than kind of the standard.
Correct.
Okay. Any reason on that? Do you feel that less quote-unquote noise that the fish can see, or
that's just kind of what I'm comfortable with at this point.
And no problems with 80 pound?
No, I have not had a problem with the 80 pound at all.
Okay. So there's a plug for Z.
I mean, there's some guys that I know there's some guys that'll run like 110, 120, but I think that's just too much at times, and it might take away from the action of the lure itself.
I mean, it does weigh. I mean, especially you're going to get a bigger diameter fluorocarbon. You're going to have to put bigger hardware on it, and that's obviously going to weigh more. And that could, especially when those weeds get tall, and if you're trying to get something right over the top of them, that's going to, take away from the actual action or the strike zone that you want to present your bait in.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to have to check out the straight wire leader. I've heard things about it, and I'm just I don't know, but
it's also good for your walk the dog baits going over the surface as well.
Okay, yeah, I see your brother said I like to use the walk the dog early in the year. It helps keep it in the strike zone, since those strike zones are smaller earlier in the year. Now, if you want to
correct
elaborate off that, the strike zone is going to be a little bit smaller due to the fact of the fish being a little bit lethargic. Is that kind of what he's talking about?
I wouldn't say lethargic to that point. I mean, the water's cooler, so the metabolism is going to be a little bit slower. So when they want to eat, they're going to want to make it worth it. I mean, they're not just going to. It's not going to be like I said earlier, when the water temperature's like 72, 74 degrees, they're just going to chase after everything and not hit something.
Okay.
That time of the year, if they're going to go after something, they want it to be there in their face long enough so they can just come up and chomp it.
See, now if I'm a muskie, right, and I just got done spawning, and I'm after, post-spawn, chilling, just waiting, and then it's like, all right, I got to eat. I'm going to talk to Jeff about this after. Don't you think that a slower moving big profile bait would actually outproduce a slower small bait? I mean, it's going to be more bang for your buck towards in the muskie's point of view. Yeah, have you ever had any success chucking, for example, slow rolling double tens, or even some of the larger phantoms, or even dogs? Have you ever messed around with that during the earlier portion of the year?
I personally haven't, but I do know people that it works for.
Mm-hmm.
But I like to kind of stick with what works for me at that point. I mean, Jeff will definitely know a lot more about this than I will. I mean, take what he says almost to gospel when it comes to Vilas County. The guy knows the water like the back of his hand up there.
Yeah, he does.
And he's a professional guide. I am just a bait maker that loves musky fishing, so this is what works for me.
No, stick with your comfort.
But,
confidence is key.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you gotta be out there more than one day a week and figure out what the fish want.
And that's such a drag, because not everyone can fish, 5 days a week.
Exactly. I mean, it's one of those things, like I said, Memorial Day weekend when I'm up there with my buddy up on Area Lake, the first or about halfway through the first day, second day, we get a pattern, and then we're able to just pound at the fish that we know are there, and we know what they want then.
So explain to me, how long are you up there for, usually?
Memorial Day weekend, it's usually like a Friday to a Tuesday, and then in June we're up there for 10 days.
Okay, so Friday to Tuesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, 5 days, 4 days. If you want to briefly explain to me how you're actually going to be trying to figure out the pattern. I mean, this is a lake that you guys have fished, numerous times, so this isn't a new body of water. But if you want to just briefly go through your thinking process about, finding a pattern for some of those people that, hey, let's go try, up there Memorial Day weekend, and what tips, tricks, what do you got?
With the way him and I do it, he's usually throwing a bucktail. I mean, that's the easiest thing for him to throw. And I'll either throw a dragon with the centerpiece out,
okay,
or I will throw a phantom, or even topwater at some point when the sun starts going down a little bit and after the water's warmed up throughout the day.
Okay.
But what I like hitting that time of year is the shallower weed beds, and there's only about 5 or 6 on his lake. So if we hit 3 weed beds and we don't see a fish, okay, let's move to shallow timber where these fish might be at this point.
Okay.
And if you don't find the fish in the shallow weeds or shallow timber, guess what? It's time to move on at that point, and then you start fishing your rock bars.
So now do you?
But it usually doesn't even come to the rock bars at that point, because these fish are sitting right on the edge of those weeds where the drop-offs are.
Okay, so pretty easy. Well, I shouldn't say easy, but a significant place where they're going to be. A weed line with a drop-off, and that's kind of your key up there,
right,
on your lake that you guys go to.
Yeah.
So do you?
It's pretty textbook on that lake. I mean, it's a smaller lake too, but it's a smaller lake acreage-wise, but it's still very deep. I mean, it's 60-some feet deep at the max.
Oh wow, that's.
So certain areas don't warm up as quickly as others, and we know our areas we have to fish. We'll put it that way.
Which, you kind of should if, you keep going up there. You should locate. You should spend some time on the water, a little bit exploring, not fishing, just looking, watching your locator and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely, due to the fact that there's probably about 3 or 4 rock bars you can rip your lower unit off on.
Yeah, that's no good. That's no good.
Yeah, and he's been fishing up there over 30 years, so, I mean, he pretty much knows where he's going.
That's good. A lower unit in the middle of a musky trip's not, missing it. It's not good.
No, it's never good.
So, last question, Adam. Then we're going to go over to Jeff. So, like you said, Smokies is going to carry the Dragons nowadays. Ross's, Tro, anywhere else that you guys are selling them that people can, find the Dragon.
I believe Blue Ribbon Bait and Tackle up in Minnesota still has a few, and TNT Tackle down in Kentucky may have some as well.
Okay, cool. So it's spreading. The Dragon's spreading.
Absolutely, yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Adam. And like I said, congratulations on the huge success about the Dragon. And definitely, you guys keep your lookout for the 2 Black Ops baits that will be here show season. So.
All right, Colin, thank you so much for having me on. You have a great rest of the show, and hello to Captain Jeff Ben Remortel as well.
All right, Adam, we'll talk to you later, man.
Take it easy, bud. We'll talk to you.
Bye. All right, guys. Adam from TNA. I'm going to get Jeff on the line right now, and we'll start talking to Jeff about, some more springtime tactics for northern Wisconsin. And that's the Musky Magnet Mama. She thought I said her name. 1 second, you guys. So, any questions you guys have for Adam, put them in the, speak them. We can always go back. Now I lost. We can always go back and have them come back on the show. I apologize for my keyboard. Being so damn loud.
Hey, Colin, how you doing?
Hey, Captain Jeff Van Remortel, how you doing, man? I was put up to say
Doing good, buddy.
to say it just like that.
Okay,
Over on TNA.
You got it, man.
So, first off, even though it's not Musky related, awesome Steelhead season. I was watching it. Finally caught my first one this year, and
Oh, cool, man.
so
Yeah, it was a great year. It was a really good year.
I saw
Very happy with
I
it.
saw some donkeys on there. They were some big ones.
Yeah, we had a good year. We had size and quality. I mean, it was good. Numbers and everything. We had a lot of good days, a lot of happy customers, and a lot of good stuff going on there. That's always a nice icebreaker. Holds me over till musky season anyway.
So
I'm really ready to start spanking walleyes and panfish here pretty quick, but
is that what's
so fixing up the boat and yeah, I mean, I'll be out panfishing here. I'd be out already, but I had to get a couple of things fixed up on my boat, just minor stuff. One of the gears in my lower unit, I mean, it's just kind of wearing down. It's getting towards the end of its life. It just needs to be replaced. Minor stuff.
Okay.
But getting that shit replaced, water pump and teller, just all the normal stuff. Getting ready for a new season here, and I'll be out on the water starting Thursday here.
Nice. So
Been driving around, checking it out, getting everything ready to go, and
you don't just
had a lot of
guide
stuff
for
to do around the
muskies.
house.
What else do you guide for? Obviously, like I said,
Everything. Panfish, bass, walleyes, pike, whatever. Multi-species and musky. I run trips for everything all summer.
Okay. So I got your number up there and the email jollywoods@gmail, correct?
Yep, JLLEYWOODS@gmail. Yep, and you can use did you find a good picture for my...
Yeah, I used your cover. I mean,
Okay,
it's
yep,
got the
good,
tiger in
perfect.
there. You have to put the tiger in there.
Perfect, yep. Yeah, right, I could not. That's my business card, too, so it works out really nice. Nice, recognizable picture. Everybody knows that fish.
Yeah.
So it's pretty sweet.
With that being said, quick little lowdown of how that day happened with that infamous tiger muskie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that was August, early August in the 2014. Early August 2014, we went out. The customer's name was Matt Witt, and he and his friend Eugene Choi came. It was the first time they'd fished with me. We launched at about noon. It was really a cloudless day, nothing really going on. I mean, hot, really hot. It was like one of the hottest days of the year, and flat calm. And we avoided the morning there. I figured the better bite would be the afternoon and evening. Just based on the conditions. It looked like the best window to me, even though it was, really hot and uncomfortable the first couple hours. It cooled off, and then there were some thunderstorms coming in later that night. They came in around dark. But, yeah, hot day, peak water temps. We had a lot of action that day, a lot of big fish were on the move. We were directly in between full and new moon.
Okay.
So it wasn't really a moon-related thing. It was summer and everything in the system was right, and it was going everywhere. You get a couple of these periods every year where big fish just start showing up, and you got to be on the water when they do, because there's 2, 3, 4 days there, and if you're not on the water, you're going to miss out big time because those fish go on a binge, and that's when you got to be out, and that was one of those days definitely. And so yeah, we moved that fish, put it in my GPS. I didn't see it. I didn't see it right away. He saw it first. I kind of saw the flash a little bit. I saw there was something there, but it was flat, calm, clear water. You could see really well. And I asked him how big he thought it was, and he said, real big. He'd only caught maybe I think he said 3 or 4 muskies prior to that. He was a good fisherman in terms of mechanics and everything. He was doing everything right, but just wanted to go out and try hiring a guide, see if he could break the learning curve a little bit for some waters up in northern Wisconsin. And so he said, yeah, he did everything right in the figure 8, just turned away from him. And I asked him how big he thought it was, 40, 45 or bigger. And he said, yeah, definitely a big fish, really wide back. And we moved it about 1 something, a little after 1. We came back on it, I don't know, about an hour later, 45 minutes to an hour later. I got it all written down somewhere, but that was about it. We came back just as a few clouds started to show up. The wind finally started blowing a little bit. I mean, it was still only about 5-mile-an-hour wind, but even by the time you see in the picture, you can see the water significantly rippled in the background. It was picking up with about 5 to 7-mile-an-hour wind, and a little change in the environment. We went back, we finished that spot, worked through another spot, a little secondary spot nearby, and before we went to the other side of the lake and tried some other spots, we went back through that spot and caught it within, a couple yards of the waypoint, and, about 25 casts in after we went back on the spot. Double tens. Was caught on a Truman tail, which is a guy out of southern Wisconsin, by Stoughton there, Madison area.
Okay.
His name's Paul Truman, and he made that bait. And also the bait that he raised it on and it nipped at the back of was another bait he had made. Called it the tube steak, just a big, it was like a giant Rizzo Whiz, kind of a double 10 Rizzo Whiz, but got some real heavy weighting to it, and really a neat bait. I've caught some really nice fish on it, great for deep water fishing. Really gets down there and has a real big thump to it.
Nice. So so you said that you saw it, marked a waypoint, and you went back later, and this was a little bit later in the season. Now.
No, just later in the day, like 45 minutes later. Yep.
But you said it was like in August, right?
Yeah, it was. It was August. I can't remember the date offhand. August 2nd or August 8th, somewhere in there, early August.
Now, is that as important in the springtime? You mark a fish,
What, going back on fish? Oh yeah, anytime you're on the water and you got an active fish located, if you know where it's coming from, it's always best to. To remember where those fish are located, even if you don't know why they're there. They usually do. So
That's true.
Probably more important than spring, as important or more important, certainly not less.
Okay.
In spring, you will tend to find fish in concentrations in areas, because a lot of times they'll be gathered around something like the first emerging budding weeds, or a concentration of bait fish that might be following something a little different. Just, there's smaller things, maybe it's just a little bit warmer water on that end of the lake from where the wind's blowing it. It could be all 3 of those things and a couple other factors as well. So, early season fish, you're going to want to remember where you see those fish. We've had some really phenomenal opening days the last several years in particular, and when we do find those pods of fish, they're not always in the same spot, or even in the same system, but sometimes it's if one lake or river isn't on, another one tends to be, and those fish do seem to be packed in there pretty tightly together.
Okay, so if you actually...
For one reason or another.
You mark a fish, you have a pretty good chance of actually catching a different fish in, a relatively small area.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we pulled, I don't know, last year on opening day we landed 13, and we probably caught and lost another probably 5, 6 at least. I don't remember how many we lost, but opening weekend we had 13. I think opening day we landed 8 between myself and my boat partner, and we hooked 9 and landed 5 or 6 in the first 2 hours of the season. And all but one of those fish was using the same 50-yard, maybe 100-yard stretch of shoreline on a relatively medium-sized, not too bad, So it was one of those days, though, but it's definitely one of those things, we hit a couple other spots that were similar, didn't really see much there. Hit a couple other types, those were shallow weeds, not rocket science, shallow weeds, 2 to 4 feet of water, emerging stuff near a known spawning area, certainly.
Okay.
And, so stuff like that. It was a classic spot, no doubt. I mean, it's definitely not something that you look at and say, "Oh, I can't believe there's fish there." I mean, you definitely look at the lake and go, "Yeah, it's probably a good spot to start," and it was. But again, we went through once, went through again, and we just kept pulling fish out of there. So a lot of times, especially if it's around a feeding window, when I've got a fish located or a number of fish located, I'll just keep going back through there if I feel like it's a multiple fish spot. I'll certainly keep going back through the spot over and over. Maybe switching the baits, maybe not, depending on how active the fish are. Until they kind of dry up, because oftentimes early in the season they will be congregated.
Okay. So me and Adam were talking about what his kind of technique is in his area. Springtime, I had a big question. Conservation of energy. Slow, big moving baits. Is that a thing? Do people have wide success?
Well, yeah, I think there's two things aside from just strapping on the old classic, double showgirl or double 8 bucktail or single 8 or 700 series, bucktail, stuff that is always kind of a classic producer or, 6 or 7 inch jerkbait or whatever. I think you wouldn't want to usually do two things. You want to do one of two things, and it depends on the lake, and it depends on the time of year, and it depends on, when ice went out, when the fish spawned, how far along they are in the progression from recovering from the spawn. And usually it's, if the normal isn't working, you either want to go really big or really small. And when downsized to really small, we're talking like spinning rods, small bass gear, throwing 4 or 5.5 inch baits, small little jerk baits, at times gliders, at times topwater. But again, downside, small spinners, perfect example, stuff like a, number 5 MEP, so Rizzo Wiz, the classic early season producers. But you really can't effectively throw those on many traditional musky rods. So, downsize into something in a 50 size reel, like the like the Beast from Abu Garcia, something like the Beast in the 50 size versus what you might normally use would be the 60 size for your bigger baits, or even still using the 60 size but downsizing your line to accommodate and put it on a smaller rod. You can still have that bigger reel on there if you like that, which is fine, but you're going to want to make sure you downsize your leader, you downsize your line, you downsize your rod, because you just don't get the same vibration.
Okay.
It inhibits the ability of that lure to produce fish, in my opinion.
All right, so
when you're using too heavy a gear.
If you actually go downsize your bait significantly, you got to downsize everything pretty much.
You want to downsize the gear you're throwing on, absolutely.
Okay.
Now that might be all the way down to entailing, removing snaps and swivels and tying a blood knot to connect your leader directly to the line. Obviously something like a bucktail or a small spinner, you're going to want to still have a swivel on there of some sort. But just for smaller jerk baits, small glide baits, even small rubber and stuff, you can go and you can eliminate that, and it kind of makes it just for more clean presentation.
Okay.
And again, I'm talking on when you're downsizing to what some would probably just call like a micro presentation, right? You're basically throwing bass baits. Another thing to consider in that stuff is small chatterbaits. I know you're talking with Adam from TNA there. Small stuff of that nature. In fact, that's I think one of the. It's a really nice bait. I mean, they're really great baits. The Angry Dragons, and I know they've talked about coming up different sizes and all sorts of stuff. They've got a lot of good stuff in the works over there. I've got a couple of prototypes of stuff that they've sent me, and I'm excited to use for this season too. But chatterbaits in general. I mean, I had a 4-fish day one day with a buddy of mine on opening day. Not opening day, I take it back. It was like the week of opening. So it was a couple days after opener because I fished with some other guys opening day. But I had a 4-fish day on a 99-cent Walmart chatterbait. And the reason I threw it on, quite honestly, one of my other buddies, he's like, I was out fishing bass and I caught 2 muskies. I'm like, okay. So it was one of those deals where we were fishing and we were moving some fish. They were around and just said, back with it. We'll give it a shot, and threw it on and ended up smashing fish. And it was like, all right, sure, why not? I mean, nothing major, nothing, biggest was like a 38. But whatever, on a spinning rod and light gear, I mean, that's as fun as anything, especially first week of the season,
Wow.
Yeah.
So we just got.
But there again, I mean, that smaller presentation was key in that case. You're talking about a 4-inch profile bait.
Okay. So we just got a question come in from Mason. He said, "New lake for opening day. Where do you begin? North side, east side, like Linders or creek mouths?"
There's a lot of, it depends on every system. Now, something like a creek mouth, how much current's coming out there, it's always a good place to start early in the season. You're looking for it's not as important, I don't think, necessarily what side of the lake you start on. Traditionally, people would say, the North Shore, because, it gets the most sun, and it's got when you got a warm south wind blowing, that gets the most attention from the wind mixing water. And that all definitely it's a valid point. It's very valid in many cases. The place on the lake that you're going to want to start is you want to figure out, on a new lake, you want to figure out where that spawning area is. Because those fish haven't gone far from it, in most cases. Guarantee it. I mean, if you got a bulrush bed, start by the bulrushes. I mean, that's just a classic example. There's many other things that they'll spawn on down wood and stuff like that. They're broadcast spawners, so they typically do cover a large portion of the shoreline when they're depositing eggs and milk. But typically something like that, a classic spot would be some old leftover bulrushes. They'll be brown. Most places, they probably won't be green yet. They won't be up, at least opening day. Shortly thereafter, they will be. And I have seen it where they're, almost to the top of the surface. and underneath, and you'll snag up in them, and they can really be a pain in the butt to fish through. But the fish are usually there. At the very least, the males are usually there and still hanging out. So and they're a little bit more apt to bite a lot of times, especially if you're just getting over the spawn. They're a little easier to convince a lot of times than the females, though it's definitely not always the case. It just depends, each lake, how far you are away from the spawn. That really is, and you're looking to be a good 10 days after the spawn would be ideal, in my opinion. I mean, it can go any way. I mean, there's guys that catch them while they're spawning in states where it's legal. Not the case in Wisconsin, obviously, but, or even in years here where we get a really delayed spring and they're spawning still an opener. Have they been caught? Sure, certainly. Absolutely they do. But ideally, in our neck of the woods, typically our opener, those fish are in a post-spawn.
Okay.
A post-spawn mindset. So, starting shallow and finding the spawning area as important or more important, in my opinion, than maybe focusing on, a certain side of the lake, a certain, a creek mouth. However, that being said, many times these spawning spots in the places where they produce the best are located, say, a creek mouth coming in on a north shore with a bulrush bed. Okay, so now you've got all three going for you. That's going to be definitely... Yeah. So when you get those combinations of factors, it adds up. It's like counting cards in blackjack, right? When the deck is hot, that's where you go. The more positive favors you have, the more positive things you got going for you, the better off you're going to be.
Okay. All right, so there you go. Mason, answer your question. So even pre-scouting during the spawn, checking them out, like, hey, you're going crappie fishing, going bluegill fishing.
That is crucial.
Keep your eyes out for muskies.
Definitely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I am on the water most days through the month of May, leading up to our opener, which in northern Wisconsin is Memorial Day weekend. It's a Saturday Memorial Day weekend. The UP opens mid-May, so north of us, I don't do too much fishing in the UP, very seldom. Used to run up the Buttes there every year. This is kind of a, when the UP opened up, just to kind of get out, shake the dust off a little bit. Don't really have time to do it anymore. I haven't done it for the past several years, but but there again, so in our neck of the woods in northern Wisconsin / the UP, there are times and there are chances to fish for those fish prior to Memorial Day weekend. But by and large, most of my waters, Vilas, Oneida, Iron, and Price counties in northern Wisconsin, our fish are not available until Memorial Day weekend legally, anyway.
Yeah.
But being on the water that time beforehand is absolutely as good or more. I mean, it's the best thing you can do. There's no substitute for time in the water, and I've talked about this in a lot of articles and a lot of other, it's one of those things where a lot of seminars and stuff where I just really think it is so important. And hey, not everybody can be in the water 7 days a week. I get that. Mm-hmm. But if you got the time to get up for a weekend or two and check things out and take a note of what you're seeing. If you're seeing musky spawning activity in the middle of May, hey, by opener, they're probably going to be done. And there might be still stragglers still coming in if you get a cold front. But there's going to be fish that are post-spawn. There's going to be fish coming back on the feed. They're going to be on the mend. They're going to be ready to eat. And that might be a good lake choice,
okay.
To start with. This year, I don't think we're going to have too much problem with it. I think the spawn will be normal, if anything, if we can call it that. Last year was kind of the same deal. We had a relatively, a normal ice out, a pretty easy ice out. Once the ice was gone, we had some sunny weather. It's been kind of chilly up here and that, but the panfish bite is already in the upswing up here. Guys are doing pretty well on panfish. Again, lake specific, but the panfish are definitely moving shallow right now. They're nowhere near spawning, but they're coming into those shallow bays, and seeking out that warmer water, and they have transitioned from that, post-ice out, seeking warm water and very finicky to bite, to the post-ice out, and then the next step over after that period where they are starting to be, they're becoming susceptible to anglers, and they are feeding more heavily, especially on their warmer days, and things are moving along nicely. So I'm anticipating a pretty good opener this year. Pretty excited for it.
That's good to hear. I think me and my buddy are actually going to be heading up there for Northern Opener. First time we've ever done that.
Oh, fantastic! What county you usually fish? What area?
We got a cabin up in Pembine, so Cauldron Falls, High Falls Flowage, the Peshtigo River.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So we're either going to be hitting that or...
Those flowages typically warm a little quicker, too, so they can be a little bit ahead of schedule many times for all species, not just for muskies, but for panfish and stuff, too. So, yeah, that should be some good fishing, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, we're either going to go up there and, go over to Vilas and something like that. I mean, there's enough musky lakes up there. We'll find something.
Yeah, there's one or two, that's for sure.
Yeah, just a couple. So... Like you said, time on the water, biggest thing. Obviously, like you said, people.
Definitely.
We can't do that. So if I'm a weekend warrior and I, fish local and openers around the corner like it is right now, what should I be paying attention to? Main thing is figuring out spawning places and where they kind of are at in the spawn, correct?
Yeah, that's going to be a big one for you. And you can kind of get an indicator of that by looking to see what other fish are doing. Hey, if you see a lake where the crappies are on the beds and they're on the beds hard, the bass are in spawn mode, bluegills are up in the shallows, probably not on the beds yet by Memorial Day weekend, but in some lakes they will be, especially real shallow, dark, stained lakes. Those are the lakes you're not going to necessarily see those types of, you're not going to see the panfish unless you're fishing for them because it's usually pretty dark. And you may see a little honeycomb colony here or there if you're really looking for it, but those are the types of, but if you see a lot of guys up shallow pounding fish, you can kind of guess that, okay, yeah, the panfish are spawning pretty heavily here.
So are you a big
so look for that, but.
No, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, that's fine. I was going to say the biggest thing with selecting your opening day water, if you're a guy that hasn't been able to get on the water, say the first day you're showing up is Memorial Day weekend, you're showing up on opening day or the day before, don't get creative, don't get crafty, don't get sneaky, don't try new water. Go to where you're confident. Go to your confidence water, see what your fish are doing there. I mean, unless your confidence water is like Trout Lake or something, but go to places, if you fish the area and opener before, go there to get your finger on the pulse. That is, any time of the year, I would recommend that for anybody that can't spend a lot of time in the water. You have that urge, hey, I'm going to go try out a new lake and this and that, and that's all well and good. But if you truly want to dial in on the bite and see what stage of the spawn, see what these fish are really up to, see what the lakes are looking like, you got to start on your confidence water. And that's going to be the best way, because you go out there, spend a couple hours, you check the spots that you know what they look like, you check you see what the weed growth looks like, see what the fish are up to, see what's spawning, see what's not spawning, see if you're seeing any muskie shallow. Just give it a little time like that. You can even do that later in the day on opening day. Opening day, just go out opening morning. Hey, it's always a great time to fish early morning, no matter what time of year it is. If it's really cold or something like that, yeah, it might take a little bit, sun warm up, and those fish might turn on. But there's always going to be predators moving early in the morning, no matter what you're doing. So, fish for the first couple hours, and then, hey, midday, maybe spend a little time driving around looking at that stuff, and you'll be set for the rest of the weekend, especially Memorial Day weekend being a long weekend. You kind of burn up Saturday and use that to get dialed in and hopefully catch a couple fish in the process. And then Sunday and Monday, you're going to have a lot better idea what you're after. So hit your known spots, get dialed in on, get your finger on the pulse. Don't be too anxious to try new water. The deck is reshuffled every year, and in fact, a lot of times the deck reshuffles on what lakes are good, what lakes are not, what lakes are hot, and what lakes are just, for whatever reason, not going. Every season, every transition, often week to week, month to month, moon phase to moon phase. So this time of year more than ever, it's just important to get out there, go with what you know, get an idea of what those fish are up to, and then extrapolate and go from there.
So with that being said, I'm a weekend warrior. A lot of my friends are. Going out there and throwing classic spring stuff. You should do that a little bit more, like you said, if otherwise downsize or upsize. Now, how big is that upsize? Can it be pounded?
I'm not saying to go through 2-pounders. I wouldn't say go through 2-pounders or something crazy, but I would certainly be very open and receptive to mag dogs, regular medusas, even up to husky medusas or pounders, depending on what lake you're on. Pounders are probably a little bit big for that. I mean, I'm not saying it can't work. I'm not saying it's never happened, but that you're getting a little extreme there. But there again, it depends on your quarry. A big easy meal is hard for a big fish to pass up a lot of times in the right mindset. If we've got really good conditions, what you're looking for on a chance where we're gonna upsize. Look at how the fish are reacting to your baits. I will often not start off with a real big presentation unless I see behavior from the fish on your more modest and moderate size stuff that really indicates to me that they're going. I mean, a good example is several years ago. I had one of my best opening days. Certainly, I hooked 9 fish and I landed 6. The largest was a 49 and a 48 and a half and a 46 and a quarter, and then I had a 41 and a 38 and a half, and then a smaller, a little guy. But I started off the day, and that was all on magnum rubber. Opening day. I didn't get on the water till 10 o'clock. I just was kind of like, I was going to go out to a lake that I had caught a few fish out of before and wanted to check it out, and went out there. I didn't expect to do that well. Whoever does, but. Yeah. It was one of those deals where, I started with smaller stuff, like a regular bulldog. I started with a bucktail, wasn't really having any action. Started with jerkbait there, had a follow. Switched over to small rubber, and immediately hooked up on a fish and lost it. And, I was like, oh, dang it, that sucks. But, early in the season, you're just getting going. Made a few more casts, hooked another fish and landed it. It was a shorty. It was a little guy. I don't remember how big it was, up to 26, 28, 30, somewhere there, small fish. But yeah, it was, first fish in the boat for the year, and, makes you get the slime on the fingers, and it feels good. You're excited about it. And then, Went on, and then I ended up getting the tail ripped off of that one by the next fish. I lost another one like a few casts later. I'm like, oh god, it's the only one I had in that color. So I switched up to a magnum size, and I went up to that, and then I started catching bigger fish. And when that bait got destroyed, I switched up to another, something similar again, and that bait kept getting destroyed, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger as the day went on. Now that year was, what was that? It was 2012, and that was the year we had like the record early ice out, or like the earliest ice out in the last many decades, whatever it was. So the ice was off in like March or something. I can't remember whether it was March 18th or something crazy. It was off super early. I can't remember the exact date, and each area went out a little different. But the weed growth was very advanced for that time of year. It looked way more like the June 7th, June 10th than it did Memorial Day weekend. You know what I'm saying? I think things were a little further ahead that way. Now, last year, we also caught hooked fish and lost fish also on Big Rubber, again, opening day. But we also caught them on, little 4 or 5 inch jerk baits. We caught them on, small spinners. We caught them on top water. Caught them on a little bit of everything. So there wasn't a super huge pattern that had developed for us last year, which is similar to this year, but it was lake dependent.
Okay.
Top water didn't work on every lake, but there was one lake we went to in that I think it was Monday night too. Yeah, it was the last day. Monday night we went out there and had action from like 5 fish, had 3 of them blow up on it, and landed one that ate in the figure 8, like just crushed it. I mean, these fish were going on it like it was the middle of June. So again, top water opening weekend, that's not something most people think of. However, in this case, the fish were responding to it. So, and the reason that I switched to top water there was because the real shallow weed growth was up high enough that it was difficult to work other types of baits through. You could burn a bucktail over the top, but I'm not a huge fan of burning and blistering speeds in Wisconsin in general, much less on opening day.
Okay.
Minnesota, those fish really seem to respond to that in a way that our fish don't always. I'm not saying speed doesn't work here. It does, but it's not nearly like you would have there, or even Lake of the Woods, or some of the places where you classically read those articles about. So I wanted to work something through there that was still, a bucktail bite was definitely going, but it was tough to get through there, up where the fish were holding, which was very, very shallow. And, so top water, I was like, strapped on a Dr. Evil, threw it out there instead of crushing fish. I'm like 10 casts in. So it was like, okay, that's a no-brainer. We'll keep throwing that. So I did. And we caught fish on it. So
okay, so don't be too afraid to stray off the springtime small classic stuff, but don't get stuck on it.
No, especially if the fish are moving. Especially if the fish are moving well for you. Okay. It's just one of those deals where, getting back to what I was originally talking about there, I kind of got sidetracked, but if you notice that the fish are moving really well, they're coming in, they're destroying baits. You're throwing a regular bulldog, it's getting crushed, for example, or you're throwing an 8-inch or a 9-inch suic and it's getting crushed. Don't be afraid to upsize to that 10-inch suic or a mag dog because of big fish, especially if you're contacting and seeing those post-spawn females that are recovered and on the chew. Don't be afraid to switch up to that because they'll hammer it. They will. I mean, it doesn't. A big meal, the stuff they eat under the ice would probably shock you.
Oh, I could.
I mean, it's you know what I mean. They're taking big meals when it's cold water. They just eat a lot less frequently. So for them to do that when they're on the recovery is, when you think about it that way, it makes a lot of sense. The traditional is very small early in the season, and a lot of times it is the ticket. Again, even going down to micro-size stuff, real small stuff. But the big stuff can be just as big of a trigger, especially for larger fish.
So, Mason is asking another question, a little bit summer-related, but he said, how do you pick lakes in summer because you guide every day? How do you decide? Obviously, time on the water is the biggest, most important factor, but maybe for a weekend warrior planning a trip. If I was to plan a trip this summer, what do you think, what should I do to plan that trip?
Again, it's tough. If you're planning the destination to a certain lake, if it's a real weedy lake, I would avoid that in the summer. Something like a View de Zere, for example. I don't care to fish that in July and August. I don't know, maybe some people do. But I would probably go to something like North Twin instead. Just I use those as an example. They're well-known lakes. They're, but they're, again, opening day, and I guess that's kind of a bad analogy because I've actually caught quite a few fish on lakes like Twin and large lakes like that have those expansive bulrush beds, and View de Zere as well. But the fish in View de Zere are typically well past the spawn and much more apt to feed than a lot of the fish on North Twin on opening day most years. Again, not the case all time, and certainly not the case for all fish. Are there fish in both systems ready to eat? Certainly. But I'm saying, if you had to pick straws out of the deck and one's going to one lake and one's going to the other, you might hope for that unless you got some techniques that'll get those fish to bite. I'm just saying, for the average angler, there's guys that excel at deep water fishing that can find these fish out there and that do very well fishing for them, and that is different. But or even the guys that troll now, I get that's going to become more and more popular up here. But something like that where you're talking about locating those fish, they're just harder to locate in a system that doesn't have very developed weed growth and stuff, which is why you hear a lot more people fishing open water in June, in those bigger lakes in particular. Something with more advanced weed growth that's just going to make those fish a little bit more targetable, a little bit more predictable, and be a more reasonable choice for the guy that doesn't get to fish 7 days a week and wants to catch fish, isn't out there to experiment, wants to go to a place where he's got the best chance of putting some fish in the bag.
I mean, or just be easier than just call you and just hire you. I mean, it'd be that easy.
Well, that is a good way to do it too, especially if you're coming for a week. I get a lot of guys that do that, and a lot of them they're not necessarily looking, and especially now, I've been doing it a number of years, and you get the guys that have come with you for years and years, and they just want to get dialed in. They don't, a lot of them aren't coming back to go to that lake. I mean, some do, whatever. I'm not going to stop it. I don't care all that much. The more I've been in the water, the more I've learned that in most cases, it just really is all about timing.
Okay.
If I'm out there, there's a reason I'm out there. You know what I mean? And knowing that, it really boils down. There's many times, and it's kind of funny to admit, but there's many times I leave my house in the morning and I still haven't decided what lake I'm going to go to. I want to meet my clients. I want to see, maybe get a little bit of a feel for, their abilities. They're just ask them a few questions, and that'll help me decide. Because, you talk to them on the phone and you don't necessarily know them, but, a couple of quick questions of, hey, you guys, have you caught muskies before? Have you caught a lot of muskies? Have you, you just, what I mean? Just a few quick questions help me. I have a handful, don't get me wrong. I've got, Lake A, B, and C in mind, and I'm like, we'll see what these guys are up to, see what they, but, you don't really know until you meet somebody, and you don't necessarily always know until you get outside in the morning, and especially when you're out every day, you know what the fish are doing the day before, you know what the fish are doing the day before that, day before that, day before that, yep. And how each weather change is going to affect them. And, I mean, there's days when we go out, and I can tell you, hey, we're not going to get bit till 10 o'clock today. Like, it's just not going to happen. They're going crazy last night. The clouds have cleared out. It's post-frontal, clear skies. Sun's coming up, might get a little action right at first daylight, but until those day clouds show back up, 10, 11 o'clock, and we get, moon phase later in the day, something, whatever the next trigger is going to be, I can tell it's going to be a pretty tough bite. So if I've got those kind of conditions, I'm probably not going out to Trout Lake to cast, I'm not going somewhere that's going to be exceedingly difficult. Okay. I want to be on a body of water that has more mouths available and more chances at a strike from a reaction strike.
Yes.
Again, not to say that you can't get bit, because you can, but there might not be a window. Let me rephrase that. I'm not going to say you won't get bit. It's that you're not going to have a strong window. So then you're going for more of a reaction strike, which would be something you're throwing rubber or jerk baits. Glide baits can be one that really fills a niche there too, depending on the lake and depending on your abilities. But you're going for that splash pow, right? That hits the water and that fish has got it engulfed before it even, and it's the only fish you see for 5 hours. You don't get any follows, you don't get any other rips. You just happen to land it within a foot or two of that fish's head and it pounded it. And so the more fish in the system, the more predictable of an area that they're inhabiting, the better off you're going to be when you know it's going to be tough conditions.
Okay.
And vice versa. Hey, if we got a chance, it's some really good weather building up, we got a lot of good stuff going, then I'll probably select more towards trophy water, especially if I've got guys that, hey, yeah, we've caught a pile of muskies. We're just looking to learn how to catch some bigger fish. We're looking to try and catch a 45 plus, something like that. That'll certainly be something that I will heavily consider.
Okay. So one last question, and then a little bit of a wrap up. Favorite?
Yeah, no problem.
Overall springtime bait, personally.
Oh, pretty easily a MEPS number 5. I think that it's the most plastic bait out there as far as it's got the most. It's just it applies everywhere. I mean, something like a MEPS number 5, maybe a Rizzo Wiz or something like that too. Something small. Those little. I mean, you really can't go wrong with stuff like that. Okay. Just because I've caught fish up to the upper 40-inch range on it. I've caught numbers and numbers and numbers of fish when other baits just simply weren't producing. More traditional gear, larger stuff. Something small like that. Something like I said, MEPS number 5, Rizzo Wiz. Take your pick. Some people one like the other. But something in that, that pretty much, I wouldn't say ultra small range, but ultra small range. I wouldn't go any smaller than that probably. No. But something like that, or maybe even a small jerk bait of some sort. Maybe like X wraps are okay for early on like that. Like a larger, the larger kind. You know what I mean? The more the musky size that, and small little twitch baits like that can be decent too. But all in all, if I had to pick one bait to have on my rod, it'd be a Mepps number 5 or like a Rizzo Whiz, something real small that has a large appeal to a lot of fish early in the season.
Okay. I lied. One last question, because this actually kind of relates to myself. I'm kind of new, third year going in musky fishing. So,
right on.
My buddy Paul, he asked, since he's also new, since pretty much every lake is new to myself, what should I kind of start for during the springtime, like you said? And this kind of feeds into the wrap-up stage of the spawning ground and stuff.
Yeah, are you asking, like, what are you looking for in a lake to locate, or just how are you selecting a lake, period?
Kind of just to increase my odds on a lake. I mean, that's already hard enough with the muskies, but since,
Sure.
All right, I want to try the other lake in a chain. And hey, what do you know? I've only fished that lake 2 times, and the only 2 times I fished it was during fall.
Sure.
But you go there, you maybe scout around a little bit, try to find the spawning areas, kind of determine where they're at in the spawning phase, and then kind of just chuck baits at them, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those deals where a lot of the stuff I mentioned here, like especially the stuff where you're looking at the system, looking at, looking to see what's on the spawning bed, what's not, what's up shallow, what isn't. Every lake has a different dynamic. There's, for example, some lakes up here, if they've got a really healthy sucker population, depending at Memorial Day weekend, it's something nobody really, I don't think too many people key in on it because you don't really see them until after dark. But focusing on the sucker spawn, people get all crazy about the Cisco spawn in the fall, but nobody really focuses on the sucker spawn in the spring. And I've caught a tremendous number of fish fishing that way. The lake that I grew up fishing and a couple of surrounding lakes there, but mostly the lake that I grew up fishing on when I was a kid over by Eagle River, just because that's where I was located out there, a rowboat. 12, 13, 14 years old, whatever, you're too old to drive or too young to drive, and no resources to go fish on your own. You went out and you fished a lot. You fished, you played the hand you were dealt. You fished the lake that you're on. And it's one of those deals, to consistently be out there fishing. And we'd go out walleye fishing after dark and stuff out there, just casting crankbaits and catching walleyes. And, sooner or later we figured out, like, oh my God, hey, these, you hear splashing up by shore, and, naturally you're going to go up there and like, oh, what's going on up there? So you shine with a flashlight and you're like, oh, geez, there's muskies up there. There's a muskie over there, and then there's a bunch of suckers up there. And it was like kind of one of those aha moments really early in life that I'm out there in a rowboat, it's like 14 years old, 15 years old, not even knowing how to drive a car, and I'm like figuring stuff like that out. You like look and you go, oh, that makes perfect sense. And they just be hanging there, and you hear the suckers, they're up with their backs almost out of the water, and like an undercut bank and little pea gravel up there, spawning and shimmying, and every once in a while you'd be out there casting walleyes, and you just hear whoosh, you hear them, they come up and crash the beach and pound these fish. Oh, definitely. And you'd shine, and they'd be sitting, the suckers are up in a foot or less of water a lot of times when they're spawning. They're up real shallow like that, right up close to shore, and the muskies are all sitting in the peripheral zone, more like 3, 4, or 5 feet out, or 3, 4, 5 feet of water out from shore, 10, 15, 30 feet, whatever. And so they're just positioned there and poised to feed, and it was not 1 or 2 fish. I mean, it'd be multiple. It'd be like half dozen fish on the one point. There's suckers spawning all around, and it's like, oh, there's like a 45, there's a 34, there's a 38. Fish of all sizes, but they were keying in. They were keying in on a very, very vulnerable food source. Yeah. Now, on every lake, that doesn't happen, and on every lake, you're not probably going to be able to find that spot. That was one of those deals where kind of dumb luck, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But, yeah, you shine a light there, like, oh, Jesus, there's a 45-inch fish right there. Okay, well, that's, hey, maybe I should try fishing around here during the daytime, you think? I don't know. They didn't go far. They just slide out to the edge, or even after dark, and I caught quite a few of them after dark, too. There again, fishing Memorial Day weekend after dark. Who does that? I mean, nobody, unless you find something like that and you go, well, they're eating at night. The bait fish that they're targeting are up close to shore at night. I'm already out here casting for walleyes anyway. Heck, maybe I'll bring my musky rod tomorrow night. Went out there, caught a fish. I'm like, wow. Caught a 44 like the next night. And it was like, oh, well, geez, there's a light bulb. So, again, one of those off-the-wall patterns. But getting back to what you're talking about as far as learning a lake, there's nothing wrong with driving around the lake before you even make a cast. Okay, if you don't know the lake, I'm not going to say you're wasting time. You can usually, if you're a really good fisherman, you've done a lot of fishing in general, maybe not even muskies, but you kind of look at a point and you go, yeah, it's probably got weeds on it, or you look at a lake map and maybe some lake maps are better than others for other systems, but if it's a pretty popular system, there's a good chance that you're going to be able to find something that's going to tell you, hey, there's weeds here, or hey, there's not, or it's rock or whatever.
Okay.
But When you go to those new systems, don't be afraid to drive around, and really, 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 I would encourage people to learn to use their electronics. The stuff that they have these days, I can't tell you how much side imaging plays a role in my ability to find these fish, especially when they're suspended off of brakes with bait fish, which is a very, very good way to find fish in June on many lakes, especially your deeper, clear lakes that the weed growth takes a little bit longer to get usable for those fish. They're not going to come up in those weeds when there's, maybe they will, but if it's 9, 10, 12 feet of water on a deep, clear lake where the weed line typically ends at 12 to 15 feet, and those weeds are 2 feet tall over 13, 12, 9 feet of water, they're not really probably going to be using them. They might be close by, and they might not be far from them, but when those weeds are 5, 6, 7 feet tall, those fish are going to be way more prone to be in there because there's going to be a lot more bait fish in there.
Yeah.
A lot of times in those times before that, those bait fish are going to do one of two things. They're going to push off that break, out deeper to that, out on like the secondary or even the tertiary break, so it'd be like at the 15 to 17 foot mark, or depending on the lake, it might have been over like the 22 to like 27 foot mark, depending on your contours. But they'll be out, they'll move out from, there's the shallow break, the medium break, and then the deep break, and then not every lake gets that deep break. Then some lakes just get to a basin, and it's 12 to 16 feet for the rest of the lake, and it's a mud flat for most of the lake. Okay, well, in that case, that might not be a viable strategy, but finding the bait fish, you'll find the muskies. When it comes to your deeper, clear lakes where the weed growth is very poor yet or not very advanced, your shallower, more stained systems, find the best weeds, you're going to find muskies.
Perfect.
Now, you might not find the biggest fish in the lake, and you still might, but I'm saying if you're looking just to go out and catch muskies, find the best, the tallest weeds. Yeah, and I agree. I'm not a muskie snob by any means. You catch big ones, you catch small ones, it doesn't matter. They're all great. Don't get me wrong. I like to catch a 40-pounder more than a 40-incher maybe, but every 40-incher makes me smile. Yeah, exactly. Heck, every 30-incher makes me smile. I don't mind them. They're great.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff, for coming on. Awesome information. And, congrats on the steelhead. Hopefully you guys have an awesome year this year.
Thanks a lot, man.
You guys. He's an awesome guy. So, thank you very much.
All right, good deal, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Good luck this season.
Not a problem. You too, man.
All right, thanks much. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, you guys. That was episode 2. Adam and Jeff. Some good spring information. Checking out some new lakes. Don't be afraid to try a little bit of different sizes. That's kind of what I wanted to try to get out of the show is, does everyone just throw, tiny little bucktails during spring? I guess not. Certain situation calls for different tactics. So next week, we will have a couple guests. One will be they're actually working on a fishing app, and I'll post more information about that later. And I still haven't decided who the second guest should be. So I don't know, leave a comment or something. Who would you guys like to see on the show, and what would you kind of learn about? I'm going to kind of go with what's going on during the season. All right, it's springtime. Let's talk about spring. Let's not talk about fall. I live in southern Wisconsin, so let's talk about southern Wisconsin. If you want to hear some, maybe Lake of the Woods stuff, well, let's try to find a Lake of the Woods guy. Let me know what you want to hear, and I'll do my best to try to, get it out there. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next week, Musky Talk Mondays. And that is it. Thank you very much, you guys.